Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope all of you guys are doing good. The title of this video, I'm going to get to the point right now. It says 2A for representative. And yeah, that literally means, but not just for representative, but for literally every single office. The Second Amendment is on the ballot right now like it's never been before. And there's elections coming up. And I get it. With what's happened in previous elections, very, very few people have confidence in them anymore. I understand that. However, literally short of stuff that a lot of people probably don't want to do, and I don't really see any will for, it's the only way that we can still have some sort of voice. Now, when we talk about Washington, D.C., and the presidency and the former vice president in this case, yeah, this seems kind of hopeless right now. But let's talk tonight and focus on your hometown, my hometown, your state, my state, places where, as of right now, we can still actually have a voice and we can still actually affect somewhat of a difference. Now, make no mistake, I'm not trying to say things are easy. I'm not trying to say that we've got this or just sit there and cheer you on. But at the same time, I'm noticing too many people are getting blackpilled lately. And there's so many things to argue about. There's so many things to be afraid of. And there's so many things to be in despair over. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. Because if we can get enough people to just unite around that, we can argue about other things. Whether you're in a union or not, you can argue about that if you want. And I have friends that are, and I have friends that aren't. We can argue about all kinds of things, but if we can make the Second Amendment the focus, if we can make the Second Amendment literally on the ballot for all levels of government, your school board, when I had Michigan State Representative Mike Harris on last week, we had a really good talk. And someone said, well, gun safety and shooting should be part of the curriculum of all schools. The government should be supporting that. And Mike said, yeah, I agree, but it's the government. Because, see, the government has a way to corrupt almost anything. And I certainly don't think you want the current office of the former vice president to be writing that curriculum. However, on the local level, on the state level, absolutely. So something that sounds as mundane as your school board is very, very important in the Second Amendment fight, because we've taken just the knowledge of firearms, the normalization of firearms out of our schools. And I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as you start doing that people become more apathetic. Because if people don't own a gun, they don't see themselves as having any stake in the game. They don't see it as an important issue. It shouldn't have to be that way, but when gun ownership was up more and when kids were walking to school with guns, for example, putting them in their locker, walking home with them, we didn't really have any school shootings back then. But the more they keep restricting, the more we do. And that's important to think about. I want you guys to think about your township board of trustees, or if you live in a city limit, your city council. Again, the Second Amendment is also on the ballot there, because there's lots of places that have passed local ordinances where you can't even have a firearm in the city. And in some areas they say, well, you can only have a range if it's this or it's that, making it where people can't even shoot in their backyard anymore. Now you move up to the state level. You're going to have, they might call them different things in different states, but you're most likely to have a state representative and a state senator. And although in certain ways they're not as powerful, it's not as high of an office as if they're your representative or senator in Washington, D.C., I would make an argument, I have a compelling argument, that they're actually more important, because actually your state laws end up affecting you more in the long run than federal laws, if you think about it. To say the United States of America is one thing nowadays would be preposterous. And I wouldn't even try to float that idea. And we all know that's not true. If you look at how people live in the state of West Virginia versus the state of New York, or how people live in Michigan versus Utah, or California versus Florida, or Alaska versus Hawaii. Clearly, there's different culture in the different states, and there's clearly different types of gun laws in the different states. Although I would note every single one of them unconstitutional, because the Second Amendment, when it says shall not be infringed, that means if there was even one gun control law, it would be completely legal and completely unconstitutional. And if we were truly living in a country that's under the rule of law, we wouldn't even be allowed to have a gun control law that would pass or that would be allowed to be printed on the books. However, here we are. And there's primarily three types of people. There's people that when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, and they rise above and they fight harder. People that say we need to fight like hell to make sure we never, ever, ever become a communist country. And I think that's very important. And we need to fight like hell to make sure they never, ever, ever take our guns. And I think that's also very, very important. And then you have people out there that are like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. We want to live under communism. We want to live under the boot as fast as possible. Now, it might be hard to believe because there's probably nobody watching this that thinks that way right now, but clearly there's some people that do think that way. And then there's the vast majority. See, both of those groups combined might be a couple percent. And then the 90-something%, virtually everybody sits there and says, what's going on? Is my TikTok feed still working? Oh, it's still working. I'm good. Maybe they read the gossip rags a little bit. But other than that, most people are just like, dude, I live in America. The land of the free and the home of the brave. We're free because somebody was brave at one time, and that's all it takes. And we'll just stay free and have liberty forever. And we don't need to care. We don't need to think about it. We don't need to pull our head out of the sand. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people think, and that's obvious. Because I'll tell you what, if everybody thought like you and me and put the Second Amendment right up there as a top priority in the forefront, front and centered, we wouldn't find ourselves in the shape we're in. People say, well, there would have to be a war before they take the American people's guns. And that may be true, except for what a lot of people are forgetting right now is we are in a war. We're literally in the middle of a cultural civil war right now. I don't think there's any more ifs, ands, or buts about it. And most people don't know. You know, I've talked about a Civil War battle. Somebody said, hey, you're talking about the Battle of Bull Run. Yeah, actually. Where people were on the side of a hill picnicking. This is during the United States Civil War, is what it's known as today. The War of Southern Rebellion or Northern Aggression, depending what side of it you were on at that time. But today we call it the Civil War. It was probably a second Revolutionary War in many ways. But both sides had assembled troops and were marching towards each other. And they were converging the Battle of Bull Run on a hill, and people were picnicking on the side of it. They didn't care because they didn't even know. Now, that war ended up becoming so hot and so bloody, you had no choice but to find out about it eventually. It didn't take long, and you definitely would have known that. But right now, if you look at this culture war that we're in, and it truly is a culture war, one side that's still wanting to say, shall not be infringed means what it says. It says what it means. That believes that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those of us that believe that the government should be instituted among men, deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, not from other countries, not from oligarchy, not from the unholy alliance of huge businesses and big tech and the fake news with a government. No, I don't believe in that at all. Neither do you, but the other side does. And it's been a long time, if there's ever been as big of a clash as there is right now. And at the end of the day, a lot of people just boil it down to something pretty simple. They don't trust the government. They don't like the government. They don't see the government as something that is going to be most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Most regular people look at the government as a way to pillage you, to steal your money, and to put you under as much oppression and fear as possible. This is what we mean when we say a tyrannical government. Because when the government fears the people, there is liberty. But when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And there's a reason why. A guy out in the country in Appalachia, in the hills of Virginia, wrote a song called Rich Men North of Richmond. And that song has literally overnight, it's only been out about a week. And last time I checked, just on YouTube alone, it had 18 million views. Maybe it's 19 or 20 million now. I haven't had time to hit refresh in the last couple hours. I'm sure all of you have heard that song by now. Trust me, I'm not going to sing it. But it just shows where people are at right now. Where the number one song in the whole country is just calling out so little in a way, but yet so much at the same time. So many people are pissed off right now. And of course I understand why. It's hard to afford to put gas in your car. It's hard to afford to even put gas in your car or afford insurance in the state of Michigan. And I assume it's the same way in all 50 states right now to even drive to your state capital. But then you have to fear, if you go to your state capital, that you could be labeled as something. There's people that went to the Capitol a couple of years ago that are still rotting in a dark hole on bread and water, and you guys know that, and it's in the back of your mind constantly. But even if you were to be able to afford the gas to go to the Capitol and get up enough courage to talk to your representative, to talk to your senator, to have a rally on the front steps, your right to peacefully protest, your right to peaceably assemble, your right to petition your government for a redress of grievance, and your freedom of speech and of the press and of religion, it's all guaranteed to you. And your right to keep and bear arms is also guaranteed and enshrined in the Constitution. Except, of course, pretty soon here in Michigan, where they're getting rid of your right to keep and bear arms when you're at the state capitol. And I put out a video about that earlier. And look, I know a lot of you guys live in Michigan, and shout out to all the Michiganians out there right now. You guys are typing in gas prices. Type them in there. Remind each other about how bad stuff sucks right now. You do know that you have to realize what the problem is before you can fix it, right? We need to realize there's big, big problems in this country. And then we need to come up with some energy and some focus and some plans to fix this crap. Because a lot of us are pissed off, and I'm pissed off. It doesn't matter if you live in Michigan or not. It's not just how they're doing this, or what they're doing rather, but how they're doing this. It wasn't bad enough that there was a quasi-secret, meaning nobody even knows about them. Nobody even cares about them. Capitol Commission. Let's keep the paintings in good order, the cobwebs off of them, keep the lawn mowed. All right. Maybe a light bulb burn out. It's a historic building. And now relying on a spurious, at best, in my opinion, Attorney General opinion from 2020. Now, keep in mind, that was pre-Bruin Supreme Court decision. We need some legislators to grow a backbone in the state of Michigan and sue like hell and fight like hell over this. But what they've done is to try to make it where the lawmakers aren't so worried as they put out a new draft rule. Okay? And they're not going to exempt the members of the Michigan Senate and the House of Representatives, because that is a body that could actually stop this commission. But that's not all. I talked about this earlier in the video I did today, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long. But they've also exempted, as long as they have a CPL, an individual who is employed by the Michigan Supreme Court or Michigan Court of Appeals, and who is on duty and who's authorized to carry a firearm. Think about that for a minute. I mean, there's really three ways, but you'd hope one of the first two ways would be most effective. You can either go to your legislators and have them enact a law to repeal something, or repeal a law, or repeal authorities, or whatever of a commission to get rid of an infringement. That's one way. But they've exempted them, in my opinion, to try to make it where the legislators care less about this issue. I think that's pretty obvious. What's the other thing that you can do? You can sue them. But here's the interesting part. You know, I've talked to a couple representatives and senators about this topic just in the last couple days. My state representative actually sent me this draft within minutes of it being published. So that's awesome. I'm glad she was on top of this. But when you go to sue the government for something like this, you have to start right out with the Court of Appeals. And then if you want to escalate it further, you go to the Supreme Court. And they've exempted employees of those from this rule. I wonder why. Probably because if somebody was suing over this, they don't want to have a judge sitting there presiding over the case saying, yeah, good point. I can't even carry to the Capitol, and I'm a judge. What do you think? Do you think I might have a good guess there? Notice they didn't exempt the probate court. Oh, no. They didn't exempt the district court. No, because they don't have jurisdiction over somebody contesting a ban like this. You guys have heard of the old saying, right? Especially you Southern boys and Northerners. There's a lot of fox in Michigan here too. But you ever heard of the old thing where the fox is guarding the hen house? Just think about this. I just out of the corner of my eye, and Chanzig said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Yeah, that's the problem. And that's why about 90% of the people don't like politicians. And why, unfortunately, where we're supposed to have a justice system, right? Lady Justice, she's a blind woman, blindfolded, where she can't see. She's blindfolded, so she can't see whether you're a representative or a judge, or quite frankly, anything about you. And in one hand, she's holding a sword, and in another hand, she's holding a set of scales. And it's supposed to not only weigh justice while completely blind. Just think about that. What a beautiful thing. A blindfolded lady. She's called Lady Justice. If you went to public schools and you're young, you might have to look it up, and I'm not even joking. And in one hand, she holds a set of scales, and that's supposed to balance, to have justice, where you get to hear both sides of the story. Unlike red flag laws, where it's an ex parte hearing, and you don't even get to come forth and put any exculpatory evidence forth to defend yourself. Can you imagine living in a country with red flag laws? That couldn't be a country that also has a Second Amendment, could it? What is the supreme law of the land? The new totalitarian dictates or the Second Amendment? And we all need to decide that. Because the other side's deciding whether we want them to or not. Justice is not supposed to look at whether you're a politician or not. In fact, a politician is supposed to be a very lowly public servant. They're not supposed to be somebody of a better man or a higher class. No, that's actually one of the main things that the founding fathers and the colonists were escaping underneath the King of England, King George. No. And on the other hand, she holds a sword. Why? That's because justice is supposed to defend everybody. And that means it's supposed to defend especially you. Not barely, kind of, maybe sometimes, you know. Especially and most importantly you. Because if you have power, if you're of the upper echelon, and you have political connections, and you have money, and you have power, and I just repeated myself, didn't I? In most cases. You don't need to be protected as much because you already have the state, the government protecting you. Now, the reason why Lady Justice wears the blindfold is she's not supposed to be able to tell if you're rich or you're poor. What color you are, what gender you are, see, none of that matters. It's either you're innocent or you're guilty. And you would have a jury of your peers, and you would have all of the due process set forth that was endowed by your creator, but confirmed and affirmed in the Bill of Rights. And the sword is there to defend that, to defend it with arms. See, taking up a sword has been a symbolism of people fighting like hell in this battle of good versus evil for a very, very long time. fact, if you go back to the Bible, Jesus told his disciples, at the very end, near the very end of his life, he said, take up a sword. One of them asked and said, well, what if we don't have a sword? He said, sell your cloak and buy a sword. If you look at the United States official crest, it shows an eagle clutching arrows. See, the government always has realized this, and all governments always have realized this, that all political power comes from the barrel of a gun, whether it's an actual gun or whether it's a sword or whatever the current military fighting implement is of the day. This has been talked about since history was first recorded. And right now, the government knows that more than ever as they're continuing to become more powerful. And they're continuing to intrude upon our everyday lives more and more and more. And simultaneously, their number one goal seems to always be to come after your guns. You know, somebody brought up something to me the other day. And they said, well, how can you predict this? How can you know what's going to happen if they take our guns? You can't prove that this is going to happen or that's going to happen. I'm like, look, I don't need to be clairvoyant. I'm not a psychic. I actually don't really even believe in that. If you do, that's fine, but I don't. I'm like, no, you just have to look back at history. You don't have to look back very far at all. You can look at Venezuela very recently, that up until just a couple decades ago, had a higher per capita income and a higher per capita standard of living than virtually anywhere in the world. Now they struggle to chase down garbage trucks to try to get food. And whereas when they were one of the highest per capita countries in the world, they enjoyed things like pets, which is technically a luxury if you think about it. And then when they could no longer afford to feed their pet, a lot of them had to eat their pets, ravaging through dumpsters and trailing garbage trucks looking for scraps of food. Now, as the communist countries took all of the resources away from the people, because for how small that country is, they have quite a bit as far as oil, right? In fact, we're buying oil from them now. Tell me that's not absurd. Really, really crappy oil that has to come into the United States, and the only place they can refine it is in Texas. And shout out to all the people who refine in Texas. I'm glad you guys have a good job. I mean, it's a really crappy job, but a good income. I'm glad you guys are able to feed your families is what I meant by that. I don't mean that working in refineries is a good job. No, dude, it's as blue collar as it gets, and I know it's really crappy, dangerous work. The government there kept all of the oil and the resources and all of the money for itself instead of letting it trickle down to the people. And when the people finally realized, they said, well, what are we going to do about this? We have to revolt. They actually kind of tried to a couple times, even as of very recently. But they couldn't really revolt because, see, the population of Venezuela was already disarmed a couple decades before that, in the late 70s. There was literally door-to-door gun pickup in Venezuela. And this isn't the first time this has happened. This is actually one of the most recent times it's happened, actually. You can keep going back. You can go back to biblical times. You can go back to World War II. You can go back to, let's see here, the 1770s. And what is now the United States, when the Redcoats were coming for the colonist guns, which would soon become the founding fathers. I don't know how many different places you have to cite to people or just to remind them, but this has happened before. And this has always, always happened. It's happened thousands of years ago. It happened hundreds of years ago. It happened 50 years ago. It happened 20 years ago. And I think for the most part, it's starting to happen here right now. You know, I see more and more people struggling to even fill their grocery basket full of food. Then I see more and more gun control laws, and in cases like the Michigan Capitol edicts that to any sane reading aren't even found under the authority of law, and by a commission who doesn't make law but makes rules that end up having the force and effect of law. But they exempt the lawmakers and they exempt the courts. In so many ways, our courts are starting to become a canary court, and in so many ways, our republic is starting to become a banana republic. I have a question for you guys. This isn't the poll question. I'm going to go over why I asked that in just a few minutes. Make sure you guys check that. Make sure you guys check that poll question there. Most of the time, if you look at history, different societies, countries, by the time they realized they had to fight back because things had become so despotic, they had been reduced under absolute despotism, in the words of Thomas Jefferson. Most of the time when they went to fight back, they couldn't fight back anymore because they were already disarmed. So what do you guys think? How's it going to go down in the United States if they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing? I'm not calling for anything to happen. I'm just saying, if you look at the way things are going, a lot of people believe we are going to be in some kind of crazy like civil war soon. Although, as I said earlier, we're already in one. It's for the culture. It's for what this country is going to become. But do you think the United States is going to wait until they pick up all of our guns before people finally realize why they have them? Why the Second Amendment was written? See, Michigan's been a state for a long, long time. A couple hundred years practically itself. And Michigan's version of the Second Amendment is Article 1, Section 6. And it doesn't say shall not be infringed because it didn't need to say that because that's already part of the supreme law of the land since Michigan is a state in the United States. But Michigan's Constitution, which the most recent version of it was 1963. So we're only talking 60 years ago. They still understood what it meant to keep and bear arms. And it simply says, Article 1, Section 6. Right? Every person has the right to keep and bear arms in defense of himself and the state. The Michigan Constitution literally says why you have the right to keep and bear arms. To defend yourself and to defend the state of Michigan. That's why. So when lawmakers in Lansing start passing laws to take your guns or to drastically impede on your right to keep and bear them, look, when you drastically impede, when you do all this, it's the whole frogs boiling in a pot thing, right? Where the water just keeps getting warmer and they keep getting more comfortable. Isn't that sick? As you're boiling them to death, they actually keep getting more comfortable until they realize, but then they finally, by the time they realize they can't jump out anymore, and they're virtually already dead at that point, and very soon thereafter they do die. But anyone that would pass a gun control law in the state of Michigan, first of all, it's repugnant to the Constitution of the state of Michigan, obviously. And second of all, they don't want Michigan to be defended. Now, when you look at the huge amounts of money they're giving Chinese corporations to come set up shop and take over part of Michigan as virtually a separate country, well, maybe you're not surprised to see that they don't want the people of Michigan to be able to defend it, right? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? That literally, if you were to follow, some of you remember your grandmother, and hopefully she's still alive, but maybe she had a recipe you really liked. For me, it was actually her scalloped potatoes and ham. Maybe for you, it was her chocolate chip cookies. But if you miss your grandmother's chocolate chip cookies or scalloped potatoes and ham more than anything, and she had passed on and you could no longer go to her house to eat them, but you had the recipe and you wanted to remember exactly what it tastes like, wouldn't you do your best to follow the recipe as much as possible? Well, of course you would. It still wouldn't taste as good as hers, but you'd at least try to get close. And that would be a good thing. But speaking of recipes, when literally there's a recipe that was written a long time ago, on how a government becomes tyrannical and how people become subjugated to such government and become enslaved under it and become destroyed under it. And it's literally written to a T. You can look at so many societies, so many civilizations, so many countries. Why would you follow that recipe? Kind of boggles my mind so much why so many people do. And I'm sure it boggles your mind. Now there's 2 ways you can go with this. Well, I guess 3. You can just not care, and that's what most people are. Or I guess you can go along with it, which if you want to go along with it, shame on you. If you hate the United States, then get out. Go somewhere else. Seriously, though, this answer is so easy. If somebody hates this country, like literally hates this country, why don't they go move somewhere else? You don't want to be here? I don't want you here. Everybody's happy. That's the closest thing you can have to a free lunch, isn't it? But no. That's not how despots work. That's not how tyrants work. But say you don't want that, and I'm sure none of you do. You can either become so overwhelmed because they're piling so much stuff on top of you that you just kind of tap out and say, I don't even care anymore. And I hope that's not the case. And my reason for doing these streams, and the reason I'm doing this stream tonight, is to try to encourage you and motivate you to not just swallow the black pill as become the popular common parlance, right? Where you're just like, that's it. Everything sucks. Everything's over. There's nothing worth fighting for anymore. Well, okay. I kind of would give, I get it why people think that way. I do. And I get it why people feel that way from time to time. But if somebody truly believes that, they could probably just move out too, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're just like, whatever, I hate all the despotism and tyranny in the state of Michigan or in this country. All right. But at the same time, woe is me, woe is everything. It just sucks so bad. I'm going to do nothing to try to help. Nothing. Then they may as well just move out too. Just get out of the way for people that still do want to enjoy what's left of this republic. Do you guys ever think of it that way? And then a lot of you are thinking to yourself, no, I do want to do something, dude, but like, what the heck do we do? I don't know. That's why these chats are good. It gives you guys time and space to talk to each other about different ideas, different ways to try to win this culture war, different ways to fight back. I come through and enjoy reading all of this later on, and you guys give me a lot of wisdom and a lot of encouragement. So hopefully you guys are in there encouraging each other, and I know you are, but even if that doesn't seem worth it, you're encouraging me by giving me ideas and telling me things that you're doing right. I'm going to get into a couple things that's going on here and tell you guys why I put that poll up there. There is actually a little bit of a real story behind it. But before I do, I want to thank all of you guys for so many ways you support the channel. Some of you have already left generous super chats tonight, which I really appreciate. Those of you who are channel members, supporters on Patreon, as well as Locals, which is a censorship-free site where I do a weekly live stream where I touch guns and post awesome deals. I can't share the deal here because it's against the terms of service, but I'm going to give you guys a quick preview. It's currently the pinned post on my Locals community. So I know a lot of you guys have joined, but if you haven't been there for a while, make sure you go check it out. I have a deal up there right now where you get 250 rounds of 124 grain 9mm in an ammo can for $60. And some of you would even be able to get free shipping on that. All of the details are in that post. So yeah, like you literally get like a $12 ammo can. It's one of the plain old plastic 30 cal side. I looked it up. That's what they cost. So you're left with $48 for 5 boxes of 9mm, 124 grain, brass cased, brand new production. Dude, that's like $9 a box, which is $9, $10 a box in that range. That's literally without even accounting for inflation, cheaper than before the flugaloo occurred. So a lot of you guys still trying to shoot on a budget. Make sure you don't forget about my locals community. I'm literally hooking you guys up with stuff on there. Like I post some working man's caliber price deals on there on pretty much a daily basis. So don't forget about my locals community. Check it out. You will literally see that right there at the top of the feed. So I'm going to read a few super chats. If you can help me cue those up, Linda. And then I'm going to tell you guys why I put the poll there and why literally the title of the stream says 2A for representative, 2A for representative, 2A for senator, 2A for city council, for township trustee, for school board. We need to unite around something. And as far as I can tell, it seems to be one of the only things we have a chance of, because everything else, people just want to argue about and argue about and argue about, even amongst ourselves, amongst our whatever. But there's supposedly 100 million gun owners in this country. And we have to have some sort of a plan. Look, guns are cool. They really, really are. Like, there's philosophical reasons for guns that I've talked about tonight, and I'm going to keep talking about as long as I still can. But then just on the face of things, like, you could literally sit there and try to talk politics with an 18, 19, 20-year-old, and more often than not, it would fall on deaf ears. But if you're like, dude, let's go shoot some guns, all right? Most of the time, unless they're already completely brainwashed and they become a complete weak imbecile, weak mentally, weak physically, right? Dude, they'll start loving guns. Get them into guns a little bit. Now, we're not talking about FUDs. FUDs are the thing of the past. They're a dying breed. They're a real big problem, but we need to work past them. Let me tell you what. You take a young kid that's out there working for minimum wage, finally affords his first gun because they know how awesome it is, and then say, so-and-so government man wants to take it away. That's when they start to come back a little bit and be like, take what? I bought this with my own money. I own this. There's ways to do it. And I think a lot of you guys are probably better at thinking ways than me, but I'm just saying. QD with a super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. He says, fight like your rights depend on it. I agree, because they actually do. And look, when we say fighting, I'm talking about in the court of public opinion right now. I'm talking about the culture war. Because the other side, although they're way more violent than our side when they do get violent, that's what the other side's doing. Every single day, they're fighting like hell to try to ruin this country, destroy this country, and take your guns. And for every one of them, there needs to be one or preferably two of us fighting back the other way. That's literally just how this works. Thank you, QD. QD with another super generous super chat. Thanks so much, man. Make sure you guys are filling out that poll, because I'm going to tell you why I did it in just a minute. He says, state laws are 100% more important than the swamp. I agree. And when we say the swamp, that's Washington, D.C. It was literally built on a swamp. Started to get a new definition for me, though. Lansing, that's getting pretty swampy, too. But here's the thing. There's 200 and something United States representatives in the House, right? Congressmen, they're called. None of them have found time to call me. None of them have found time to, I have to scoot over a little bit, sit right here next to me. Mike Harris was here last week. A couple months ago, my favorite state representative, Jamie Thompson, was here. Let's see here. Between texting and actual voice calls, I've talked to about 8, 9, maybe even 10, somewhere between 8 to 10 off the top of my head without looking at my phone, state senators and representatives in the last 48 hours. Dude, I'm nobody. I'm a dude just sitting in my shop. I'm cutting grass in between lawns, I'm calling them, whatever. So if a nobody in between being on his lawnmower can get a hold of that many and actually have conversations with them, that shows that, yes, the state level is still where we have our best chance. Nobody in Congress has time to talk to me. I get it. They probably don't have time to talk to you either. I get it. But just in my video I did today, a lot of you were telling me I wrote my senator and they responded back with this, or they didn't respond. Okay? My representative is, actually a couple of you guys came in and said, my Michigan state representative is Brian Bagol. I know Brian. He's actually a really cool dude. Very pro Second Amendment. They're like, when he was my sheriff, he did this. See? That shows you guys are engaging and you actually know who these people are. That's a good thing. Now, make sure that your friends and your family know and they can start engaging. That's what I think your role is. You engage and then try to get somebody else to engage. That's literally all it takes. Starts off small and just keep going. I'm not saying they're going to agree with you, but if you can't get your state rep or senator to acknowledge you at all on something, it either means they need to be out, they need to be voted out right now, and you need to be running around your community making sure they lose to somebody who will actually represent you, or it means you're not trying hard enough. So that's my friendly challenge to all of you. Judy with another super chat. Thank you. He says a state can do a lot more to stop bad federal government than any person. Absolutely. Yes. And that's what they're supposed to be, as our public servants that swear an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of your state and of the United States of America. Of course, that's what they do. My representative is there in Lansing, supposed to be defending and protecting 90,000 people. And so far, she's doing a hell of a job. Other people are doing a hell of a job. Other ones, no. They're sending their 90,000 people up the river. Thanks for another super chat, QD. He said, hope it's worth it. Well, I hope whatever we're doing is worth it because, yeah, there's a lot on the line right now. There might not be much time left. That's what I'm saying. There might not be much time. Thanks. I appreciate it, man. Ultra Mega Mama Linda. I like her. Did I ever tell you guys that? I got a thing for her. Just saying. Says, so cool of you, QD, to give 10 channel memberships. Well, thanks, man. And all of you that are channel members, now you can look over on the members tab. There's extra community posts and extra videos. I just posted a members only video last week, and I actually have 2 more in the queue where I post behind the scenes stuff. So you guys will be able to see that. Nevada Memes for Liberty with a generous super chat. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. That's awesome. And you're over on Twitter quite a bit, right? So make sure you check out Nevada Memes for Liberty. Thank you. Ron Stacy with a super chat. What's happening, Ron? That was cool, man. I'm looking at his avatar. I was there that day and hung out with Ron and others. Is Crazy Heathen in the chat? I saw him earlier. We were hanging out. Shout out to him too. And Ron Stacy says, keep fighting. That's what we do. Educate others what's going on. Heck yeah, man. You keep up the good fight too, because we have to educate. So many people literally have no clue. They're like, yeah, so what's going on now? What do you mean the Capitol Commission? Never heard of them. And I'm like, I do that too, guys. It's okay. You can do that. You know, I was talking to Representative Mike Harris. We did it during the day. Not as many people got to see that stream. But if you get time and want to listen to it at a podcast, it was a hell of a stream that we did together. We covered a lot of stuff. I think Representative Harris did an excellent job. We were talking, and he's like, dude, sometimes he's like, man, I'm in my vehicle just driving home from Lansing or to Lansing, just going, argh! Like, he does it too. Trust me, if you're a freedom-loving rep in the state of Michigan right now, you're going through all kinds of heck. Trust me. The other side's putting them through anything and everything you can think of plus more. He's like, but you just got to suck it up. He's like, you can get pissed, and it's okay to be pissed, but then you just have to take that energy back and channel it. And he goes in there fighting, knowing that most likely he's going to lose on the vote because the Democrats have the majority in Michigan, but he knows he has 90,000 people that he's supposed to protect and defend the Constitution for. And hoping that if he can lead by example and show that he's fighting the good fight for the Second Amendment and many other issues, but we were talking about the Second Amendment, that then the people will come back and come out of the shadows and come out of hiding and get off their couch and put their TikTok down for a few minutes and maybe get their act together enough to put in a better government in Lansing, Michigan, or in any of your home states, wherever you're at. This all applies. It's all the same thing everywhere. See, here's the problem. So many Americans sit back, and I'm not saying you guys right now, just keep this in mind as you're just looking at this whole culture war concept. So many people get so mad at the government. And it's really a big cop-out because they should be mad at themselves. Just think about that. If you have somebody in office who's tyrannical and a despot and trying to deprive you of your natural right to keep and bear arms, that just means you and a whole lot of people like you, not literally you watching it. You know what I'm talking about, though. The collective you, just the general masses of normies, of NPCs, whatever you want to call all the people that are totally fine with us becoming communist country and under tyrannical government. People just want to blame politicians, but they'll never, ever, ever want to blame themselves, will they? Now, you either have one or two options. You can either do nothing and blame yourself and remind your friends of this that I'm talking about. I'm not condemning you guys, and I'm not preaching to the choir either. I'm talking to people who are then, my hope is, and the encouragement I'm trying to offer is they're going to go talk to other people. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can around town this week. I don't live in all of your hometowns, so that's why we all need each other, and I need you guys, and you need me, and vice versa, right? You can fight like hell, and even if you lose, at the very least, you still win, because now you don't have to blame yourself. Look, I know that sounds kind of shallow, but we have to have ways to be motivated. At least I'm not going to be one that's sitting there saying, what's the Capitol Commission? What happened? What's going on? I want to go exercise my First Amendment protected right to go watch them while the House or Senate's in session, but I can't without giving up my Second Amendment right. Ho-hum. Woe is me. What's going on? All right, back to TikTok. Back to watching my electric car charge or whatever people are doing. They're watching it charge. If you don't get special service run to your house, it can take 7 days. Right? I'll be walking soon because I ain't going to buy one of them damn things. They get rid of gas and diesel cars, I guess I'll be walking. Whatever. Or get on a horse like Paul Revere and say, the Chinese are coming. Their battery plants in Michigan, and screw that crap. If you want one, go ahead, but I ain't going to have one just because the government told me I'm going to have one, if you know what I mean. The government said, we want you to have less guns. That's all right. I just went and bought 3 more, right? No, I'm trying to win this fight, but I'll be damned if I'm one that's just going to sit there and say, you know what? I did nothing. Oh, well, ho-hum. Tell my beautiful daughter when she becomes a beautiful woman someday here, it's okay. Daddy was fine with all the tyranny. I didn't care. Sucks to be you. I'm not going to have to do that. I'm either going to say, look, you still live in a free country because Daddy fought like hell, and now you need to fight like hell. Or, if not enough people care, at least I'll be able to tell her, hey, I tried. I truly tried. And maybe you can try harder than me, but I did my best. I did what I could. I think that's the way a lot of you feel, right? Hope so, anyways. And I think deep down, a lot of your friends and family feel the same way. They just need to be reminded of what the heck's going on. And you remind them in the ways that you see fit. I don't know. I don't know how to have a conversation with your friend or your brother or sister or coworker or whatever, but maybe hopefully you do. John Krupp News with the super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. He's talking about something on his site. I'm not going to read that, John, because of YouTube's terms of service, but you guys can take a look at that. So thank you. Colin L with a super chat. Thanks, man. He said, what was your first gun? He says 22 Marlin, 25N at 13. My first gun was an SKS. which I've talked about many times. I bought an SKS in 1994. It was a Chinese, more modern production type, spike bayonet, the blonde chew wood furniture. So that was my first gun. And thanks for sharing yours. QD with another super chat. Thanks, man. He said the other side was dumb enough to film themselves breaking the law. Has everyone forgotten this? Oh, I know. The current former vice president's been on TV talking about all of the various crimes he's committed. Yeah. Fire the prosecutor. You're not getting the $1 billion. Guess what? They fired the prosecutor. You guys, I mean, look, it was called the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan, right? Detroit, Michigan. One of the crappiest places to live in the whole earth and one of the biggest Democrat strongholds for the longest time. Oh, imagine that. Imagine that. Nothing to see here. The wagons are coming in and out. Remember that? The wagon, it was piled high. They said, oh, that's just them bringing in their lunch and their reading material for lunch. People are looking at it and they're like, huh. What's coming out of that van? Boxes of, oh, nothing to see here. And then when people tried to look through to see what it was, they put like pizza boxes and stuff over the window. Like, you can't even make this crap up. I get it. I totally get it. Now, here's the problem. I don't see anybody doing anything else right now. And since they're not, we have to win this in the court of public opinion first, and hopefully only. Because the founding fathers, the hardest part actually, was not to get people to fight. Everyone wants to say Lexington Green right now, Concord Bridge right now, 1775. Because the fighting actually started over a year before the Declaration of Independence was written and signed. Took them a lot longer to get everybody all on the same page and to realize what they wanted the government to be. And quite frankly, things hadn't quite got bad enough. You know, it's interesting. This is a good segue to another story I've been wanting to tell you guys that we need to remember. And then I promise you I'm going to get to why I put that poll up there. Go back to 1770. It had gotten hot in the streets, and there was a event that occurred known as the Boston Massacre, where there was a crowd of people, and it depended who you asked. Either the British, there was an officer and some of his men. Either A, they just started killing colonists out of cold blood, or B, they were defending themselves against the angry mob of colonists. Now, at this point in time, we're talking Stamp Act. We're talking unconstitutional taxation without representation. Things were starting to heat up pretty good. Obviously, they weren't quite ready for a hot war yet because it wouldn't get hot as far as on a war level for another 5 years. But in 1790, and this is where I'm talking again about, you think of Lady Justice, blindfolded, holding a set of scales and a sword. And then you think about right now, where I'm not a fan of him, to be honest. I'm not a fan because of what he did against the Second Amendment, but we have a former president right now that's been indicted on the state level and federal level. And the state's guaranteeing they're going to basically book him in jail. Fingerprints, mugshot, all of that. But that actually doesn't fall into the system of justice at all, because there is a justice system for the president. And it says that for any crimes committed in office, these are these high crimes and misdemeanors that they refer to. Now, treason or aiding and abetting of the enemy, right? Providing aid and comfort to the enemy. That's the only crime in the whole Constitution that has a punishment, and that's punishable by death. But they talk about what happens if a president commits a crime while they're in office. First, they have to be impeached by the House. And Trump was impeached a couple times. But then they also have to be tried in the Senate. And they have to be found guilty in the Senate and removed from office. And up until then, and only if that happens, I should say, only if that happens, can they actually face any criminal charges at all. That is the due process for alleged high crimes and misdemeanors for a president. Because if you didn't have that level of threshold, all it would take is a president gets in office in some state that doesn't want that party or president in power, would just trump up a bunch of indictments, indict them, and throw them in jail. And that's what they do in third world countries all the time. And they're doing that right now. When we talk about the justice system and how many people look at it as the Department of Injustice, right? And we talk about how in this Michigan Capitol ban, they've exempted the employees of the two courts that can put them in check. Let's go back to 1790, Boston Massacre. They held the British on trial. That, and again, depends whose side you were asking, either defended themselves against the mob of colonists or killed colonists, civilians in cold blood. Now, most of these colonists at that time, a lot of the leaders would become the founding fathers, right? There was no founding father that was more critical of the Stamp Act and the tyranny of the King of England than John Adams, who at that time was a prominent attorney in his mid-30s. He would go on to become our second president, Washington, Adams, Jefferson. But in 1770, he was an attorney, and he literally did one of the most impossible things. We hear things like make America great again and all that, but what I'm talking about is what helped actually make America great and the type of system of justice that this country was actually founded on. So they put him up on trial. The Brits, I'll say, the redcoats, because at that time, keep in mind, even Adams and Washington and Jefferson and Hamilton, they were all still British themselves. They were actually still technically loyal British subjects until the Declaration of Independence was declared. There was no United States of America. There were the 13 British colonies. And again, there was no colonist or founding father of that time that was against the British as much as John Adams. But he had one virtue about him. As far as it goes, the stories of people that wrote about him during that era, he wasn't necessarily the most charismatic guy, actually. He wasn't the guy that on his face, like there's certain people just no matter what they say, everyone kind of follows them, right? No, but he had a quality about him that's actually very, very rare to find. It seems harder and harder to find nowadays. And they said he was literally not able to be corrupted. He held values of justice so high that there was nothing anyone could do to corrupt that man. And that's what the people of that time that lived with him and around him said about him. That was his greatest virtue. So he literally did the impossible task while he was one of the main founding fathers that was currently working on a plan, working to get public support to overthrow the government, to overthrow the biggest world's military superpower, the King of England, the British Empire. He actually volunteered to represent the British that were on trial in what was the colonies at the time and would become the United States. He didn't represent them because he liked the King of England. He didn't represent them because he liked the redcoats occupying and taking quarter in their homes. He didn't represent them because he approved of the Stamp Act, which was, again, an unconstitutional taxation without representation, which should become one of the core values of the founding of this country. No, he represented them because he believed in justice. Because without that blindfolded lady holding a sword and a set of scales, we wouldn't be able to have the country that would soon become the United States of America. And he knew that. And he knew that at the end of the day, our justice system would be, quite frankly, the only thing that would make it different than Great Britain and the rest of the world. So he represented them. and called a ton of witnesses in, actually, and the witnesses ended up being very contrary. Now, on the surface level, some people say, well, Adams called those people in that way and made everything in disarray on purpose to make sure that it went a certain way. But if you read further into it and actually look at the accounts and the expert witnesses that testified and the actual witnesses that testified at that time, it's actually probably not the case. There was probably all kinds of different renditions of what happened that day because it was rather chaotic. And it wasn't just simply black and white, because in the end, there ended up being a split verdict. It was found that for some of the Brits that they had killed colonists in cold blood, and then in other instances, they were actually defending themselves. And while they wanted the Brits out of the United States, or the colonies at that time, more than anything, and so did Adams, what he didn't want is just a mob rule. He didn't want it where there was just two wolves voting against one sheep on what's for dinner. And that was to be one of the founding principles of this republic that was going to be different and better than any other government in the world. Is that while you're literally in the process of getting ready to stage a war of independence against another country, right? Or against your own country, is what it was in that case at that time, justice still had to prevail no matter what. And he actually, like I said, with split verdicts, defended the very Brit that he was getting ready to fight, and they did end up fighting just a couple years later. The colonists had guns at that time. And when the British Empire realized that, the natives are getting a little restless, and they're probably not going to just keep on arguing with us much longer, they did go to try to confiscate their guns. Paul Revere, whether it was him or his helper, there is a little bit of dispute on that, actually, to that famous midnight ride that the Redcoats are coming. And the Redcoats were coming for their ammunition, for their guns, because they had realized we're not going to be able to keep these guys at bay with just arguments alone anymore. They're getting ready to fight back. And they did. And it first went down Massachusetts, two different places, virtually simultaneously. It's referred to the shot that was heard around the world, right? The shot heard around the world. Concord Bridge and Lexington. They call it Lexington Green. There was a green pasture there, right? You can still go there today. But here's the problem. If you go there today, this is what's so ironic. If you go to the place where the war literally touched off to start this republic that would become the United States of America, that the supreme law of the land would say shall not be infringed, you get infringed on your right to keep and bear arms more in Massachusetts than almost any place in the whole darn country. Now, are people just that weak and lazy nowadays? Or are they too stupid to do the research? What do you guys think it is? I'm truly asking you. Because in the very place, I remember my friend Jared from the Guns and Gadgets channel did a little video series. Maybe it's been a couple years ago now, where he went to some of these sites and filmed it. You virtually can't even have a gun in that state. I mean, you can to a point, but I mean, it's so far away from shall not be infringed, it's not even funny. Wow. What do you think it is? And I do adamantly believe, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, and Andrew Breitbart, as far as I know, was the one that came up with this quote, but he's dead now, so I'm going to keep saying it. Said politics is downstream from culture. And if you look at history, it actually always has been. The law is downstream from culture. Everything is. See, we've always been in a culture war. We were in a culture war in the 1770s. We were in a big culture war all the way up and until the 1860s, and even during. See, even during hot battles, we're still actually in a culture war at the same time. That never, ever, ever goes away. You think of World War I, World War II, Vietnam. I mean, every time we've been in these hot battles, there's actually a simultaneous culture war going on. It was against the law to dodge the draft for the Vietnam War, and a lot of people did. But the draft dodgers won the culture war and brought in Jimmy Carter. You have to go back to the Carter administration where gas was higher than it is now, just so you know. One of the most failed presidents we've ever had. But the culture war had won. The draft dodging side of things had won. And said, the hundreds of thousands that we lost, young men that we lost over there, thank you for your service. No thanks. And he just gave all the people amnesty and said, you can come back. They went to Canada. They went to wherever. Now, the law of the land said that if you dodged the draft, you were going to be under some serious repercussions. Do some serious time, pay some fines. But it didn't matter because the culture had shifted in the United States during that time period where the people said, no, that doesn't matter. They all got amnesty and they all got let off the hook. So while we focus on certain things that we can't control, and it just gets so ominous and makes everybody's head spin, we need to start focusing on things we can actually control. First, we have to win this culture war, which we are in so many ways. I mean, you look at Richmond, north of Richmond. What, does it have 20 million views yet, guys? Maybe one of you can look it up because I'm in the middle of hanging out with all of you right now. But a lot of people are pissed off right now. For those of you that watched my video earlier, even if you don't want to hear me talk, go watch the last 3 minutes of it. My friend Doc Huckleberry with the American Revival Band, he did an awesome song. He's from Michigan, has a band here in Michigan. Make sure you go check him out. There's a lot of people that are waking up and a lot of people that are pissed. I say we rally around the Second Amendment once and for all and put that on the ballot everywhere and put it in the court of public opinion. You can try stuff in the public square. You can try stuff in your hometown, in a cornfield, wherever it is that you hang out with people. Every single day, because the other side's doing it every single day. Trust me on that, they are. I've gone to Lansing, Michigan several times during this current session and see that filled up with people saying, take the guns, do something now. And I haven't seen more than a couple dozen pro-Second Amendment people be able to assemble there. Now, I do understand there's some rallies. I did try to get a hold of a friend of mine that knows more about those. We did end up playing phone tag. Maybe his phone wasn't getting service when I called. I'm going to try again over the weekend to get more information about that. I just have to know information about a rally before I'm going to promote it. Like, I just have to know something. I don't know much right now. How many of you guys like politicians? I'm not talking about any particular one right now, but just how many of you, just if I ask that generic question, how many of you, that's just all I'm going to ask. Do you like politicians? Just air quotes. One ubiquitous thing. I know I'm on a little bit of a lag, so I'll wait to read that in a second. I don't care for politicians either. Not ones that are more worried about their politics and more worried about their career than we the people. It can be tough to find in some places. I get it, but the ones I like are more of the public servant type that are there to protect and defend and uphold their oath to, in my case, living in Michigan, the Michigan Constitution and the United States Constitution. Okay, you guys are coming in now. No. Yep. Crazy Heathen said, I like a few, and thanks for the segue. So I talked to a few representatives recently, my favorite state representative, and she's my representative and my dear friend, Jamie Thompson. She texted me like they had put out the new ruling at 10 a.m. It wasn't even 11 yet, and she'd already texted it to me. I'm like, awesome. Not like awesome that this happened. You guys know that's not what I meant. Awesome that she was literally on it like that quick. I think she was the first person in the whole state of Michigan that knew about it. She texted it to me immediately. That's this new rule. It wasn't much longer than that. My phone rang. It was Michigan State Representative Mike Harris. He's like, dude, I'm pissed. Now, keep in mind, this new rule exempted both of those. Representative Thompson and Representative Harris, they can carry guns in the Capitol now. Okay? I just happen to know both of them are CPL holders, so they can carry guns in the Capitol. No, they're still really, really pissed. Heard back from both of them right away. Texted my state senator, Joe Bellino. Said, well, they exempted you guys. Are you still going to do anything to try to stop it? Look, last time I saw Joe face to face was in Monroe a couple weeks ago. He walks right up, big smile on his face. What's up, babe? How's it going? You could say we're friends, buddies, you know. We've known each other a while. I asked the question to him just as tough as I do anybody. I said, so now that you're exempt, are you going to try to stop it? And he texted back and said, yes, I am. So there are still some that's fighting. Here's what you guys need to do. If you're in Michigan, this specific issue, but if you're in any of the other 50 states, trust me, there's an issue in your state that you need to be taken care of. If you're in Tennessee, red flag laws are a huge, huge issue for you right now. From what I'm hearing, more and more, your governor is a pretty big fan. God bless all of you in Tennessee. Buck up and fight like hell. Okay? I expect better of that. I expect better of Tennessee than that. I expect a lot better of Michigan than this crap right now. I've also talked to, and when I say talk to, I don't mean like I talked to their secretary or their aides, or, you know, you guys call them different things, whatever, or that I was on Facebook. I mean actually like talk to them. I've talked to Michigan Representative Jamie Green. She's not happy at all about any of this going on. And I've talked to Representative Bob Bazat. He's not happy about any of this going on with Capitol Commission ruling. I've talked to many, many more reps about many other things, but we need to know that. We need to know who's who. We need to know where they stand. Now, here's something that came up earlier, and this is why I have that poll up. If you look at the poll on the top of the chat, let me pull it up real quick here. Hold on a second. It says, who would you vote for? A candidate who posted a pic of them doing the following: holding an AR-15 or at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Now, to me, it's like, that's just why like nobody likes politicians. They're like too busy schmoozing with the Chamber of Commerce and too busy doing all that stuff. They're worried about protecting our God-given rights and standing up for we the people. Now, some of you might be in kind of a sarcastic mood tonight, okay, but I still have some good polling data. We have over 100 votes, 108 votes. Keep in mind, when they do like these big polls that they'll come on, CNN says the new poll puts the former vice president out in front of Trump. Yeah, a lot of times they only poll like 200 people. So we actually have enough people to make this a decent poll. Somehow 15% of, I don't know, I guess idiots that are watching this right now said that that's the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Or they were just making a joke. You guys can still probably change your vote if you want. I haven't ended it yet. But the fact, if there was even one person that voted for that, I was like, ugh. But still, though, still almost a 9-to-1 ratio. 85%. So there was a picture earlier that was posted, right? Let me share my screen real quick for you guys. This was on Facebook. All right. You think of politicians. There we go. This is in the area that's known as Downriver Detroit. This is your classic business meeting, your Chamber of Commerce meeting, and you can see there prominently in the center, you've got Senator Camilleri. Now, notice who's not in this picture. This one here. She's not in that picture. When I asked her, I said, what do you think about the Second Amendment representative? She wrote down, shall not be infringed, and signed her name to it. See, even get your rep to do that. I'm being dead serious. And I said, good, I'm glad you weren't invited to that event. She wasn't invited to the event. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. You weren't invited to that event. Like, if you were in that event and that picture, I would have been cringing like crazy, right? So there's your classic picture of at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. And then there's that. And 85% of the people agree. I just did a poll, okay, that they had to pay nothing for. Literally, if you get a poll that has 100 people, you have to pay a pollster like tens of thousands of dollars to get a poll like that. So, what's more impressive? What's a better looking picture? Right here? You guys can vote up there, sound off in the comments. I'm conducting an official poll right now, okay? This is a poll. What would you guys prefer representing you? Right here? Or, that's your first vote. Or right here. All right, there's your options. Would you rather them, in other words, be hanging out with people at the gun shop talking about how they can preserve and defend the Second Amendment? Or would you rather have them worried about the business development plan? You know what I mean? The business development plan in the community. Now, I think some of you guys were just playing 3D chess. It's just a very simple question. You guys have to understand how polls work. They'll just ask you a very simple question. Do you support Trump getting arrested? Yes or no? Like, that's literally how they ask these questions. They don't give you all the context. And I'm limited on the characters. So Dolly Madison's dad, for example, said, I was actually confused about the poll. Thought that the person should be voting for 2A rights instead of flashing an AR. Okay, I get that to a point. But let me present it to you a different way. Try not to be so black-pilled. Because, dude, I'm flashing an AR, okay? I'm going to proudly hold an AR and show a picture of it. Does that mean I'm just flashing an AR? Trust me, in this political climate, if a politician is willing to hold an AR-15 right in front of their constituents, it's kind of a bold move. Because the whole other side is going to literally light their hair on fire and go after them like crazy over that. Believe it or not. So. But yeah, so apparently a lot of you guys are kind of just in the frame of mind right now where you're mad even if they're, I don't know. Or help explain to me if I'm just having a hard time understanding it. Like, if you're a pro 2A supporter, how could that be looked at as a bad thing if a representative is holding up an AR? Now, there is an asterisk. I get it. Feinstein held one up and said, she held it up at the assault weapons ban hearing and said, you need to ban this, right? See, and our side debates and goes in circles and says, what's happening, DLD, after Dick? How you doing? As long as they're not doing this, as long as they're doing that. See, we're going to sit here and go in circles with each other on this tonight. And they're banning guns at the Capitol, and they're putting in red flag laws in Michigan and in the state of Tennessee, and we'll go in circles with each other. And we'll go in circles with each other. And here we are. And here we will be. Because you know what the other side's doing the whole time? Going, ban it, ban it, ban it, ban more of it, ban more of it, ban more of it. And we're saying, well, I don't know, 2A EDU. If that's a good idea, that a state rep is willing to hold up an AR-15 and say shall not be infringed, well, that depends on what the definition of the word is. What's the definition of the word shall? Does the sun rise in the east? Does it set in the west? If the groundhog sees his shadow, how many days till spring? If he doesn't see his shadow, how many days towards winter? If it's in butts, we're candying us but. That rep probably is holding an AR-15 because they're really secretly anti-gun. Our side's so black-pilled and so into semantics. Here we are. Here we are. We are where we are. Keep that in mind. And I'll hold an AR-15 and an AK-47 in my live stream tomorrow because I can't touch guns here on YouTube in my locals live stream. And I'm not pandering to anybody because I'm not running for office. See, this channel's name is 2A EDU, and I put 2A for Representative 2024. Trying to make it a prominent issue on the ballot everywhere in all 50 states. In everybody's counties, in everybody's hometowns. If you don't know where your rep is on the Second Amendment, that means you, and not just you literally, but you can pass this on to all your friends is the reason why I'm bringing this topic up. That means you're failing as an American and you suck and you haven't done your job because you haven't found a government that will most likely affect your safety and happiness. All right, I had a couple more chats that I'm going to read, Linda. If you could cue those up for me, please. Mr. C with the super chat. Thanks, man. He said, who do you trust more, used car salesmen or politicians? Yeah, that could be a question for another stream. I asked a different one tonight just to see what people would say. I'm becoming a pollster, right? Mr. C has become a channel member. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, man. What's Mateo talking about? A 280-pound gun? Do I have any pets? Include them in a picture. I posted a picture of one of our pets on Locals as a supporters post yesterday or the day before, actually. And for those of you that watch my videos here on this channel, I did a video maybe a month ago with one of my pets that walked right up behind me while I was recording the video, actually. So. All right, I was just taking a look at the chat real quick here. So, yeah, I'm going to be on tomorrow night on Locals. Again, it's a censorship-free site. I am going to hold up an AR-15 and an AK, and don't really matter why, because, like I said, I'm not running for anything whatsoever, but I do want to see the 2A be on the ballot in your mind and try to remind all of your friends that literally wherever you guys are at. And QD just came in right as I was getting ready to sign off with a super huge super chat. Thanks so much, man. So you didn't even know this, QD, but I don't have much money, and none of you guys knew this that were generous tonight. But I'm actually planning something really cool where I'm going to get you guys some really good content at the Capitol coming up here probably in the next 2 weeks. And then I'm going to be traveling down south for the channel to get you guys some more content. So I definitely put all this stuff to good use, and I appreciate it. He said, I 100% agree with you. If your politician is able to stand up with an AR-15, they're probably okay. I know. And it doesn't guarantee that they're not. I get all of this, guys. I get it. Trust me. But we've just become so jaded and so black-pilled that the first thing we assume is, oh, I'd rather just go with the one. Not most of us. Again, the poll's very lopsided. I was just shocked that it was even 15%. Like, that's the thing with how polls work, right, QD? You know what I'm talking about, man. Like, they only ask you a very simple question, and you just have to answer it. Do you want the one that's hanging out at the Chamber of Commerce? Right? Do you want them hanging out there? Or do you want them holding an AR-15, meaning that every Democrat there is going to try to go as hard as they can after them as possible? Nothing's foolproof. I totally get it. And people have been lied to so much that they're like, whatever. But that's where it's tough. That's where we need to do more research and more work, because if just imagine this. I'm going to leave you guys with this thought. If you're in a situation where automatically you're not going to trust the person that's voting for gun control, right? Obviously, that wasn't anything controversial, right? But then you're now against the person that's voting against gun control, that's loudly and proudly holding up an AR-15 as a public statement, being like, from my cold dead hands, I'm representing my 90,000 people if they're a Michigan rep, or 1 million people if they're a United States congressman, and they're actually walking the walk and holding that gun up. Well, but maybe they're not really. See, that's why we're in such a crappy situation right now, because some of them, it is just smoke and mirrors. And we get to the point where people have gotten used to losing for so long and used to things being negative so long, they can automatically assume that everything's the opposite of what it is. And that is the case so often. Way too often. So I guess vote for Nancy Pelosi to save the Second Amendment, and vote against Thomas Massey to save the Second Amendment because everything's opposite and stuff. I don't know. I would hope nobody's that way, but I understand why some people are, because there are so many of them that virtue signal and do all of that. But like I said, with the proper research, you can see where people are. You can see what people are. Every voter roll on anything in this whole country's public record. You can look up how your school board votes, how your township hall votes. You can look up how your county commissioners vote. If you assume that just because someone's holding up an AR-15 that they didn't vote to protect the Second Amendment, that means you're a lazy POS because you didn't even go to look at how they voted. Remind your friends of that. To know how people they voted, you actually have to look at how they voted. And then look at what they say and look at what they do. And if they're being a hypocrite, call them out. If they're being true and it's tyrannical, call them out. If they're being true and they're being a patriot, then uphold them, lift them up. And if everybody's crappy in your whole hometown, then it's probably time for you to run to be a township trustee. I'm serious. If everybody's crappy but you in your whole county, it's probably time for you to run to be a county board of commissioner. If you want to see things change at your kid's school and everyone's crappy on the school board, you might need to run for that. If everybody's crappy in your whole district for your state representative, literally everybody is, and you're the only one that's good enough, then you probably need to run for that or for your state senator. Seriously, that's awesome. I'm not running for that because I can be more effective actually doing what I'm doing right now. I showed a picture the other day on my YouTube channel. It's called a community post. Some of you guys might not know what it is because a lot of times I'll tell people, hey, did you see the picture on my YouTube community tab? And they're like, what's the community tab? Well, if you're on your phone and you're on the channel, you just have to scroll over a little bit. I guess you'd scroll to the left and there's a tab. If you're on the 28 Edu channel, to see the community post. If you're on a PC, it's a little bit different. I'm looking at it real quick here. You can see all of them. It says home, videos, shorts, live, playlist, community. And I showed a picture of, I actually had all four of my local branches of government, besides school board, were there. Bellino, my senator, he walked in just like 5 minutes after this picture taken, but he was there and I talked to him. But if you look on the left side of that picture, this is on my YouTube community tab from 10 days ago, you see a township trustee, Chris Collins, fierce 2A fighter, awesome. I'm lucky he's there in my township because now he can fight there and I can fight the way I'm fighting. Then there's me. Then there's Representative Jamie Thompson. She's fighting like Colin Lansing. I'm glad she's there so she can do that, which I don't want to do, but she's doing a better job of it than I would do, so I can keep fighting the way I'm fighting, right? And then you see Dawn Asper to her right, or I guess it'd be her left, photo right. That's like a super huge staunch, like 100% perfect on the Second Amendment county commissioner. And I've known her since Monroe County, Michigan became a 2A sanctuary county over 3 years ago now. Right? My state senator, Joe Bellino, again, not in the picture. If he would have just come 5 minutes earlier, I would have loved to have had him in there. But I'm just showing you guys, like, that's why I'm not running for office, because I have somebody at every level that's right there where they need to be. They're doing a better job than I would do. And if you look at Joe's voting record on the Second Amendment, he's done just fine with that. So, yeah. That's the deal. But you actually have to follow them around and know what they're doing. Boy, that's a weird question I just got asked. Mateo, see that champs there? Mateo will answer that for you. All right. All right, looks like I have one more super chat that popped up. Colin L., thanks for another super chat. I appreciate it. He says, do you have a good picture with a deer and a gun? That's a really strange question. I have no idea. If you're talking about, do deer carry guns? I don't know. I just don't understand the question. I'm just being honest with you. I have no idea what that even means. There he is. What's happening, Frank? Frank says, and then there's Brenda. Yeah. He went from Matt Maddock, which is, he's on the extremely good side of the Second Amendment, to Brenda. Yeah. She's part of the anti-Second Amendment caucus. But hey, man, I give you a lot of credit. You know who your rep is. We've walked down the halls of Lansing, and I'll tell you guys something about Frank Hunt, who's in the chat. It was fun to walk in my state representative's office, Jamie's office, and it was fun to walk in his former representative's office, Matt's office. That was fun. They're both great people that we get along with and see eye to eye with and shoot guns with, right? I literally did a video shooting with my state reps. I'm being serious in my instance. And with the gerrymandering, again, I know, guys, the elections, the gerrymandering, they switched his district over, and he got from one of the very best on guns to one of the very worst, all in one fell swoop. And I was standing there. I'm a witness. I was right in the hallway at the Anderson House office building, and he walked right in there and told them that he opposed the gun control laws that they were rushing through at the time. And that's hard to do. But you guys need to do that too. Because if you literally do nothing, then your rep's actually just going to assume, no matter how anti-gun they are, they're going to assume that everybody there. Yeah. They're going to say, well, you have the most anti-gun rep in your state, whether it's Michigan, Tennessee, wherever. You'll have hundreds of anti-gunners confirming them and saying, yes, thank you. Thank you for my safety, my feelings, my whatever, right? But if nobody goes in there to say no, then they're just like, look, everybody wants this. Every single person wants this. Oh, I don't give crap. I'll be real blunt with you guys. I thought you guys knew me better than that. I don't give two craps about hunting in the outdoors compared to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. The Second Amendment, look, the Michigan State Constitution literally says it. In fact, I almost hope they'll ban hunting right now. That'd be about the only thing that can save us. If they ban hunting right now, this is going to sound terrible, but it'd be the best thing that ever happened to us. Because finally, all these FUDs and NPCs and worthless pieces of crap that claim to be on our side might actually get up and do something for once. So there's my official stance. Ban hunting right now, and it's probably the only possible chance of saving the Second Amendment. But no, Michigan Article 1, Section 6. Every person has the right to keep and bear arms in defense of himself and the state. It's to protect yourself and to protect your country and your state against a tyrannical government. That's what the Second Amendment's for. And I have nothing against hunters at all. And look, it's not like everything's diametrically opposed. Yes, you can be the biggest Second Amendment supporter ever and truly get its ultimate meaning and also love to hunt. That's totally fine. I'm not saying that I hate all hunters. I'm just saying, look, as many hunters that live in the state of Michigan, the only thing I could hope for, I wake up every day saying, please just hurry up before you take away all of our guns. That's what they're going to do soon. Just ban hunting right now while there's still enough hunters in this state to actually do something about it. So there you go. Does anyone agree with me on that? Okay, somebody wanted to know the results of the poll. I think it was QDS. Let me pull that up real quick here and see where it's at. I think I can actually just end the poll because I am getting ready to jump off here in just a second. Let's see what the results of the poll are. I have to hit refresh here. Hopefully I don't refresh the wrong thing. Yeah, but still 85-15. I'm going to read it one more time. Last call. Yeah, ban hunting right now. That's what my new thing. See, this is why I should never be a politician. If I was in the Michigan House of Representatives right now, I'd probably introduce a bill and introduce it on the first day of session and say hunting is hereby banned in the state of Michigan, every last bit of it. And if you use a 22, it gets twice the punishment. All of it. If you use a bow, it gets 4 times the punishment. You know what I'm getting at, right? For all the people out there, all the people that are, again, I'm not talking about you guys that are like super, super pro Second Amendment, but also a hunter. I'm talking about the stereotypical, the hunter, the FUD. Make it where all hunting's banned, and the more FUD the weapon is, and the more you don't need this, you don't need that, the more the weapon falls under that, you don't need an AR-15. Remington 870 Express is all you need. All right. Bigger punishment if you hunt with that. Why would you need that? Compound bow is all you need. All right. Make that even a bigger punishment. I can take a deer right through the eye with my one shot of, it can't be 22 in Michigan, 25 sharps. All right. Bigger fine for that. If it's a single shot, life in prison for hunting. If it's a single shot or a bow, life in prison. That's the bill I'd introduce. If it's a pump action or a 5-round bolt action, 20 years. If it's any gun that's kind of a FUD workaround, like the Mini 14 and the Mini 30, 10 years in prison if you hunt with that. AR-15, AK-47. It's still illegal to hunt under my bill. So only a year in prison for that. You still got to go to prison because I want to outlaw all hunting, but make that sentence less. Does that make sense? I think most people know me well enough by now to know that exactly what I'm talking about with this. And it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, and I kind of am. Like, of course, I don't want to truly outlaw hunting in one sense. In one sense, I don't. But actually, I really do. Because if they did it right now, I don't mean 20 years from now after they've already disarmed everybody. But I'm saying, like, if they would just ban hunting right now. Yeah, actually, that's what I would do. If I was in office, I'm gonna leave you guys this. I'm gonna end the poll 85% to 15%. The question was, who would you vote for? A candidate who posted a picture of them doing the following. Holding an AR-15 was the first option. The second option was at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. It may have been confusing. I don't know. I don't even care at that point. I already got my data, so I'm going to end the poll. 128 voted. All right. The first law I would enact or put the bill up forth is ban all hunting, right, on day one. And then a week later, after that bill passed, I'd say go door to door and pick up every last one. That would be the next bill I'd pass. I'm not sure if it'd be foolproof, but it'd probably be the only way to save the Second Amendment. But yeah, there's the results. I think anybody who can think themselves out of a wet paper bag knows exactly what I'm saying with all of this, right? Okay. No, don't apologize to me. I mean, not like sarcastic apologies. I don't care what you bring up. A picture of a deer, whatever, dude. I appreciate the support, but I just gave my opinion on hunting. Ban it all, and we might save the Second Amendment. Oh, well, that's fine. I'll lose some subs. I always do when I say things that I mean, and it makes people uncomfortable, but I'll get them back, and I'll get way more back, actually, than I lose. Because all the ones that unsub, they'll sub, and more people will. So it is what it is, what it is. That's not why I'm here. Oh, well. Some people get it. Some people don't. All right, guys. I'm going to look forward to reading the chat on replay. I always get a lot of encouragement from it, and I appreciate all of you guys. All right. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.